It's good to meet you, Nathan.
It's good to meet you too, Caleb. Can we just get past the whole employer-employee thing?
Cheers. In many ways, this building isn't a house. It's a research facility. I want to talk to you about the greatest scientific event in the history of man.
Are you building an AI?
Hello.
Hi.
I've never met anyone new before. Have you?
So Ex Machina is really just one of a whole bunch of robot movies recently. Just a couple weeks ago, Chappie.
Yeah.
Right? And
You
then
can call that a movie, but yeah.
for the purposes of this discussion, I will,
okay.
but your point is taken. There was also Automata from a couple of months ago, which was Antonio Banderas chasing around robots. It's kind of similar to this.
Yeah.
And then if you broaden it so it's not just robots, but it's also AI. There's been a lot of AI, artificial intelligence movies. There was that movie last year, Transcendence, which was like Johnny Depp became the deputer and merged with a computer and still talked like Johnny Depp, but he was sort of a robot. He had his own like body that looked human, but he was a robot. So this is a thing right now.
And even coming up, we have Age of Ultron, which is very much an AI in a giant robot body casing, except sort of evil. And
so we could talk about like why there are so many of these robot movies right now later. But first of all, of the ones you've seen, how do you think Ex Machina rates with all these other ones? Where would you put it?
very highly. I think coming out of this one, I was very intrigued by the trailers. I thought it looked great. Didn't know what to expect. But I think of the ones we've seen lately, I mean, let's be fair, the competition is not super high. I mean, out of those, Chappie, not a great movie. Transcendence, a really horrible movie. So I feel like to say that it's the best of the lot is sort of faint praise. I think it's much better even than that. It is not only one of the best sort of robot AI movies to come along, it's one of the better sci-fi movies that I've seen in, I hate to use this vague term of recent memory, but of the past, year or so, or maybe even 2 years. I don't want to specifically date it, but it's a very good, smart sci-fi movie that also happens to have robots and AI in it, and I don't think that should detract from the movie at all.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. I mean, I agree with you. There have been a bunch of these movies, but a lot of them are trying to make big, like, typical Hollywood blockbustery action movies out of these AIs and robots. And there's a way to do that. There's this little franchise you may have heard of, maybe people don't remember, but it's called The Terminator, which managed to kind of fuse these ideas
Not
with...
ringing a bell.
Okay, well,
No.
I think it might be on Netflix. I'll get you a copy
Is
either
that the
way.
new Jai Courtney movie?
Yes.
Okay.
So those movies managed to make robot AI movies big, right?
Yeah.
They've had some misses as well, but it has worked in the past. But with like Chappie is a case where, there are some really interesting ideas in that movie that they just kind of blurt them out and then kind of shuffle them out of the way so they can do a really ridiculous action movie. And Transcendence is the same thing. Like there's some ideas in that movie too, and then it becomes like nanobot clouds like killing humans, and it's just really stupid. Like this movie is like introduces these ideas, and that's what it's about. There's like 3 main characters. They're all kind of locked away in this claustrophobic space. It could almost be a play. You could adapt this movie to the stage, and it would actually be pretty interesting. But it does have good effects. It does have really interesting looking creatures and robots, and the production design is fantastic. But it's about the ideas, and it manages to be about the ideas but not be boring, which I think is also, to its credit, it could have gone in a really kind of boring, tedious direction. But I think the actors are great, and I think the ideas are interesting enough, and the movie is really interested in exploring them in a way that works.
I think a big benefit to this movie is the casting. And they got Oscar Isaac and Domhnall Gleeson, and it's not just flat. Like you had said, it could have just been very sort of one note. Tonally, there are big spikes to the movie. There are points where you would go in and go, oh, this is big, heady sci-fi movie, a lot of intellectual thoughts and ideas and questions being raised. yet it's a lot of fun. It's actually really funny at parts. Oscar Isaac plays this really sort of charismatic Steve Jobsian type character who runs his own search engine called Blue Note.
Blue Book.
Blue Book, sorry. And he is secluded in Oregon. Did they ever say where it is?
I don't
It looks
think they
very
do.
much like the Pacific Northwest.
I thought like Iceland or something.
It could be. I mean, I don't know if
know.
they ever say, but they don't know. But it's this house off in the middle of nowhere. He has to take Domhnall Gleeson has to take a helicopter to get there. And when he gets there, ostensibly Oscar Isaac has been there by himself, and he says, I'm really hungover. So he's just sitting there drinking by himself with his robot. And his performance is so dynamic. And there are parts of this movie that you would never expect.
So let's spoil them all right now.
Well, there are those moments too, and then there are just moments of just levity that you wouldn't expect from a movie like this, when the character, they talk like real people, which I think gets, sometimes a script feels too scripty. It feels too written. A lot of what is written here feels very real because the actors are sort of bringing a little something to it, and Oscar Isaac isn't just spouting off this sort of pseudo-intellectual garbage just to hear himself say it. He's a guy who's half drunk all the time and is just going, yeah, this is fucking cool, which they, are freely willing to admit, and I think we can all kind of get with that. So it's fun. It's not just, sitting there and going, yes, sci-fi. There's a lot of fun to it, and I think that the script and the performances lend a lot to that, which they sort of have to when, like you said, there are really 3 performances in this movie.
Right.
They all have to bring something, otherwise you're wasting a lot of assets for your movie.
Yeah, and the robot is played by Alicia Vikander.
Vikander, yeah.
And she is incredible. I mean, I'm not even really sure, having seen the movie, how they pulled it off. Because it seems like her face on a living robot body. It doesn't look like CGI.
Right.
I mean, it kind of looks like a prosthetic or something. It really has a tactility to it. You really buy that this is like this robot. And she manages to be both human and inhuman at the same time. And that's sort of the point of the movie is Oscar Isaac has brought Domhnall Gleeson's character to his private estate, wherever it is, to kind of test this robot, to see if it can pass the Turing Test, as they call it, which is if it can pass for real human being. And it doesn't look human, but that's sort of the point. It's like, even though you can see that physically it is a robot, can it convince you with its humanity, with its personality, that it is alive, that it has a soul or some kind of consciousness? And so you really, to me, I bought into this thing being in the room. I just totally bought into that reality, and yeah, I got completely caught up in the kind of chess game that's going on between all these characters, where you don't know who's telling the truth, who's lying, what everyone's motivations are. It's like watching a poker game, except you can't see the whole cards. You don't know what everyone's holding, and you're just trying to guess from their facial expressions and their inflections and what they're saying. And it's really interesting to see. And as you said, like, there are these wonderful surprises where you're constantly caught off guard by this movie and by what the characters do, that you really get kind of caught up in the whole thing.
It's amazing that there's so much going on in this movie and yet they're able to pull it off completely. It's sort of a sci-fi love triangle, dramatic thriller, conspiracy movie, and every angle sort of works. You sort of feel certain parts of it. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you could go, well, I like this part, but when they kind of do this, it didn't work. I mean, all the pieces sort of come together from very different angles to make one cohesive unit. And a lot of the times when you see movies like this, you go, well, it was really good. The ending was a little bit. I thought that they, I don't want to give away too much about what happens at the end of the movie, but they really stuck the landing. I felt like it felt true. You're left guessing, and at no point through all of this is going on did I go, I nailed it. And then the movie ends, and I go, I told you that was going to happen. I mean, it still sort of keeps
It's unpredictable.
It is. I mean, as much as a movie can be unpredictable with 3 characters in it, I mean, there are, you feel like you're, right up until the ending happens, you're still left going, what is going to happen here? And who am I even rooting for to a certain degree?
Yeah, that's a great point too. Yeah, that your allegiance to these characters shifts over the course of the film. You don't know who you're supposed to be rooting for, and I think that's also to its credit. You said all the different elements were working. I would take slight issue with that and say the one element that I'm not so sure it works, you can make an argument for it, and maybe you can, to me now, I'll be waiting to judge you for it.
I'm sure.
Is there's a lot of female nudity in this film. And I'm not opposed to that. theoretically, I'm pro female nudity. But there's kind of this subtext we haven't talked about in the movie that is, Oscar Isaac is this guy who's kind of living in his little castle here, and he's building women, these robots. All the robots are women robots, and he's kind of controlling them. And it does begin to feel like it's kind of this commentary on women's role in society, that they're maybe not created by men, but put into these boxes by men and told how to act. And they're sort of made to feel a certain way. And I found that really interesting. But the flip side of that is, if it is sort of a kind of feminist commentary, why are there so many boobies in this movie?
What?
Not that I'm opposed to boobies, but it did feel weird that it's a movie about, like, women are being controlled by men, but also, like, sex.
Not even fleeting glimpses either.
Oh, no, there's a lot.
Lingering, full body,
Full
scanning
frontal.
down. I think that and I don't know, I should say I don't know that I necessarily agree with this, but I think the defense of that is that you're seeing it through the character's eyes, the robot's eyes. So when she sees her form for the first time, because for she's a robot.
Keep gesticulating in this area. I'm enjoying that.
Boobies, you said before. I'm trying not to give too much away, but
Sure.
her form evolves to the point where she begins to look more and more like a human female visually. So I think when the camera is lingering on her, it's meant to sort of evoke her. She's admiring
It's
her own
not
body.
supposed to be sexual, is what you're saying.
It's not supposed to, yet at some point when you linger on the shot of
It's
a
hard.
beautiful female form, it's hard for it to sort of not be sexual.
Right.
The slow pans up the body.
So slow.
And she's sort of, admiring herself. And I get what it's trying to do, and I think that's what writer-director Alex Garland would probably say is going on there. Whether or not it succeeds, I feel like is probably up for debate.
I just felt, yes, I'm sure it has a purpose. Maybe I need to see it again and really kind of dive into what it all means. It felt a little lecherous and leering to me in a movie that seemed to be about the opposite of that, and to critiquing lecherous, leering.
Do you think it undermined what it was trying to do?
On first viewing, I thought it did a little bit, yeah. Especially since there's no scenes of, like, Domhnall Gleeson wandering around in the buff.
No dong shots in this
No
one.
Domhnall Gleesons whatsoever, which is, maybe it's a little bit of a problem. I don't know.
All right, so if you had to rank this movie on a scale of 1 to 10,
Right.
where do you put?
1 being Chappie and 10 being 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right, where do you rank Ex Machina?
I would give it a solid 8.
Yeah.
I think some of those issues we discussed keep me from maybe giving it even higher. I think if I could put all that together, and maybe after I see it again, I'll bump it up a little bit. But for now, I'm at a solid 8.
Solid 8. I'm going to agree with you on the 8. I feel like it's very close to a 9. If we were giving out half points, percentage points, I might be tempted to do like an 8.5. I don't know that it's quite a 9 just yet, but it is a very strong 8, I would say.
Yeah, a solid 8.
A solid 8. Like if you took bolded it and maybe even italicized it and bumped the font up to like 18 and maybe made it red.
Right.
Then
Using
I could say-
computers,
Right.
all those things are possible.
Robots.
But then maybe when the robots realize what we've done, they'll be like, nope, 8 is not good enough.
They're just going to change it.
Delete,
Like
10.
Ferris Bueller changing his grades. They're going to
Perfect
change it
10.
to a 10.
Robots rule, humans drool.